These, for me, are times of intensity of change. The pace occasionally outpaces our capacity to adjust to it, when the new normal feels like anything but normal, when the Earth seems to be spinning faster and less steadily on its axis, and when more and more seems beyond our control. If that is so, and that's the way I feel, those things that are within our control take on greater importance. And one of the things that's within our control, for the most part, is what goes on day in and day out in our homes and with our families. And that's why the Dadvocacy Consulting Group wanted to sponsor this film together with the American Visionary Art Museum. Although the movie seems focused on motherhood, I think you'll agree that it's really about parenthood. It really shows the interplay between mothers and fathers, or potential mothers and potential fathers, and it also highlights the opportunities that mothers and fathers have to either encourage or discourage each other's engagement in family life. After viewing Egg, we will undoubtedly be more mindful about our parenting and our relationships in general, and I think that's a very good thing.
Is this on? Yeah. Hi, friends.
To get popcorn. It's a movie.
I'm so excited to see, to show this in a museum, because playing an artist, this was one of my dreams come true, and I didn't even know it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's such a piece about making art and being an artist, and particularly with the parenting exhibit that Dadvocacy and the museum invited us. I am beyond thrilled to be here and to have just walked through the exhibit. So thank you all for being here on this Sunday, and thank you, Alan, for having us, and thank you, museum, for having us.
So, first of all, thank you for making this movie. I think it's an extraordinary movie. I have to give you a full and exuberant disclosure to begin with. So I've known Alicia, I'm not supposed to give exact years, but I've known Alicia for 36 years because I was her elementary school principal in New York City. And actually her daughter, Liv, is older than she was when I met her. So
It's true.
one of the occupational hazards of being an educator is that you get attached to your students and rarely find out what becomes of them. So it's really exciting when you discover 36 years later what becomes of them. And one of the other thrills for me today is that a student who I've known for 43 years came all the way down from Brooklyn to be here today as well. So it's really, really quite thrilling for me personally. But thank you for making this thought-provoking film. Before we open it up for you to ask questions, I have a couple of questions that I would like to ask, and since I've now been designated the King of Daddies, it's a new designation for me. Yeah, it's kind of nice. Yeah, so I hope you'll treat me as royalty, all of you from now on. It also serves as an antidote. For the last 20 years, I've been interviewing fathers from 20 different countries, ranging in age from 16 to 104. And it's been a fascinating experience. Each interview lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And one of the questions that I asked during the interview is, when did you first think about becoming a father? And what do you think 87% say to me? Any ideas? Yeah, what they say is 87% when I found out she was preggers. That's a direct quote. That's one of the reasons I find this movie so important, is actually the idea of thinking about parenting before it actually happens. And that's what the Daddy Wishes Fund is about, and if there's time I can say something about that. But the questions I have for you, they have no idea these are coming.
I want to ask David, when did you first start thinking about it being a dad? Because I feel like it was definitely before Liv was born.
That's true. It was my father. I started thinking about it, and I remember this absolutely vividly, like it was yesterday. I started thinking about becoming a father the day I realized that my father was never coming back. My father had a heart attack when I was 7, and I didn't quite get it when they told me, and everyone was crying, and I was just saying, "That's fine, but when is he coming back?" And I remembered, days and weeks and months later, that's saying, kind of looking like, any day now, And then I also remember very clearly where I was sitting, what I was doing, the moment that struck me. And the next thought after that was, I want to be a father.
Cool. So we saw in the movie, the end, the last segment was 1 year later. So I want to ask each of you, 5 years later, how would you describe the character you played in the movie? And by the way, when Alicia and I reconnected on the telephone, the first thing I said to her was, please assure me that David is nothing like the idiot he plays in the movie. So she assured me it's nothing like that at all, thank God.
I have a friend who, I became friends with and had never met David, and the first time they met, she had seen the movie already, and she couldn't even talk to him. She's like, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to, it's gonna take a couple times.
I put my hand out.
Yeah. So I think one of our goals in this film was that the ending is very open-ended, and that people can sort of write their own stories about what happens to these characters. And from different audiences and members of the same audience, we have heard so many different answers about how they imagine these 4 people, or really 5 people's lives, 6 people's lives unfolding. So I almost don't want to answer because I kind of want to hear what you guys say first, but I do feel like Tina continues to make extraordinary art and to question what it is to be a human on this planet and what parenting means. I think that's really her whole struggle through the whole thing was, for me, her journey from the beginning of the movie, or before the beginning of the movie, is she had decided she didn't want to be a mom, and then she fell in love with someone, and they decided that together. That was a core belief they had. Then he changed his mind. Then she tried to find a way around it, and it's a great example of rationalization, of how we can rationalize anything and be like, I'll make a piece of art about, it's gonna be great, but it wasn't her core truth. And then her finding her core truth. And I feel, for me, the movie is the reason I needed to make this movie is, for me, it's about having the courage and curiosity to find and live your own truth, and putting out that message and hoping that people in watching it will find their own courage and curiosity to live their own truth, whatever that is and whatever their definition of parenthood is. And I think in 5 years, I don't know. I imagine that she's gonna walk through the relationship with that child with that courage and curiosity, and find her own way to be a parent, or to have a role in that human's life. I imagine it's going to have some of the aspects of what she considers a father, which is very different than a daddy, perhaps.
I don't know, Don's got some good deals cooking, and
Pardon? I didn't.
see, Don's got some good deals 5 years later, bigger house, bigger car. That's it for him. And a nanny.
Yeah.
Nanny. Probably adores his kid, but doesn't have a lot of time. That's Don, that's not me. That's Don, right? Where's the character 5 years after the end of the movie? Chasing around a frustrated chasing around a 4.5-year-old, 5-year-old. Wasn't sure he wanted to be a dad. That's just the truth of who the guy is.
So
I think he has an affair with the nanny, personally.
So it's kind of interesting with the questions that I asked the dads in the interviews that I've been doing, how many of them have said that the minute they became a dad, their whole life kind of changed because they experienced the kind of love they never knew existed. And it definitely changed the way they behaved. So it'd be interesting to revisit your character 5 years from now. So the second question, so the movie, as I understand it, is now distributed in the UK. And they changed the name of the movie to?
Motherhood.
So my question was to you on the telephone, how did you feel about that? And did it occur to you to suggest to them that maybe they change the name of the movie to Parenthood?
Yes, it definitely occurred to me. There have been some movies called Parenthood, and I think that's one of the only reasons they didn't. It's very funny in distribution. You want, if any of you are planning on making a movie anytime soon, you want a film that starts with one of the first 5 letters of the alphabet. So that it's one of the first things people see when they're scrolling on a list. So motherhood's way down the list, so is parenthood. And when we actually thought about changing it from egg, because there were comments, but before we went, when we had shot it and we were starting to get it out there, before we made all of our final decisions, because it doesn't really say what it's all about. And sometimes you want a title that really and we went through so many title ideas, and we couldn't find, and we thought about motherhood and we thought about parenthood, but we couldn't find a title that really summed it up as much as egg. Wait, what? Tell me. Anyone else? Throw it out there. Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's how we landed.
But you also told me that they thought it would sell better and play better
Yes.
if it had the title Motherhood
Absolutely.
as opposed to
Absolutely.
Egg, which I find
Yeah.
interesting. And the last question I have, and then we'll open it up to you folks. Alicia, you read, and David, you read the script many years ago and didn't make the movie when you first read the script, right? So what changed?
Well, when we first read it, we weren't in the business of making movies. We were just, we were actors, and we hadn't produced anything yet, and then we got really busy doing a lot of other acting. David was on a bunch of series, and then I got Orange is the New Black, and I was on a bunch of series, and then we bumped into the writer again. And in the meanwhile, we made a movie called Equity, which went to Sundance and got distributed through Sony Picture Classics, and you can also watch that on iTunes and Amazon. And very different movie about women on Wall Street. But I think in making that movie, we realized, like, oh, we actually can make movies. And this was a script that we had loved back when we first read it. And then when we bumped into the writer a couple of summers ago, exactly 2 summers ago, we couldn't believe that nothing had ever happened with it. And that years later, the subjects were so timely. And, my sweet mama recently said to me, with Equity we made, I guess, almost like 2016. So, and it was before Time's Up and Me Too, and it's all about that. And, and with this, it's all about gender roles. And to me, it's fascinating that we're breaking down how we see gender, and we're restructuring how we see sexuality and gender in such deep and massive ways, and yet we are so traditional in how we see parenthood, as evidenced by things that have happened in the news in the past week. And what my mom said was, she was like, you're always so, like, you have a visionary of like what it's gonna look like. And obviously the author had that vision even more than I. So to me, this is something so topical, and I can't believe no one's made it before.
So it's also really nice to hear you refer to your mom, because that's one of my visual memories of her walking up the stairs with you to bring you to kindergarten. So it's a really sweet memory. So opening it up to you folks, if you have questions.
I just wanted to say what great acting it was. When you got on the stage, I was a little angry with you. But it really was great acting. Both of you. And I can understand why the lady didn't want to shake your hand. But I just wanted to also say, doesn't it bring up the question about being a surrogate mom? That's very touchy now. And also, in 5 years, I see her being a part of that child's life, because it was her egg that gave him life. And so it would be nice to see what would happen in 5 years. But I can't imagine her not being a part of his life, because he wouldn't be here without her. So I just wanted to say it was great, and I enjoyed it. You did a great job.
I was upset a little bit about the politics of the story for 2 reasons. One is that even though the artist is, the one who remains an artist is very dedicated to her art, it's like this choice that she's made it's a horrible thing. And it's just kind of tearing up her life. And I do feel like there are women, and men for that matter, who decide not to have children, or who decide to focus on their careers in not such a horrible way. And I just thought, what is the message here, that choosing one or the other is awful? I think that's really why I thought the politics were a little odd. So
I can't speak for the writer, but what I will say is the writer is childless by choice, and she's deeply happy with that choice. And her journey to that choice was this play. And what she would say, I feel confident saying, because I've heard her say it many times, is she sort of created characters that spoke for different pieces of herself and let them hash it out. And for her, in reference to the politics of it, she was going through the journey of sort of making the mistake in the script of having a child for the wrong reasons, and then freeing herself from the need to do it for the wrong reasons. And I think the Tina is deeply hurt and in pain in the end of before the 1 year later. If you were to ask Risa, she would say that Tina's really happy and satisfied with her life as an artist.
And I was just going to add, having nothing to do with a mother's choice to be a mother or anything in that realm. I was just going to say that watching a story of someone who makes a really good choice to be a parent or not be a parent and does it quite well, there's not a lot of conflict. So we want conflict, and Risa has said, and I think Alicia really repeated it almost verbatim, we've heard her say, because that question gets asked a lot, that this was her way of just having the conversation with herself as she was trying to make up her mind. But then she also is an artist and she's a writer, and she knew, like, I gotta ratchet each character up a little bit. So.
Okay, so any last comments you two want to make?
I would say the only other thing around that issue is one of the reasons I really wanted to make this movie was to encourage people to have the courage and curiosity and to make their own choices. And another was to create art about the choice to be child-free. And we don't see that in art. We don't see a woman choosing to be childless as a good, okay choice. I've never seen it in art. And I felt it was really, 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 really important to talk about, because I know some spectacular women who have made that choice, and I want them to be celebrated, including Christina Hendricks, who plays my best friend in the movie. And for her, it's, some women try to have kids and it doesn't work, and that's a whole other thing. But some women just decide, I really don't want that. And I think that's a beautiful choice that should be respected more.
Then it said in the invitation to this event that there was a free movie, free popcorn, and a free gift. Okay, so you're about to get the gift, and it'll be a very different kind of gift than I think perhaps you're expecting, and that's okay. Before that, let me give you a final thought, which is, as you think about this movie, and you think about if you are parents, as a parent, but you might also be thinking about your own parents, because all of us had them. And that is, though no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start now and make a brand new ending. Okay? So in relation to that is your gift. I find that events often like this, we think about stuff and as soon as we leave, we forget it. Or you think somebody said something really profound and then you remember nothing about it a week from now. But you often remember what you say to yourself. So you're each being given a card which will allow you to make a commitment, sort of fueled by the emotions that you might feel after seeing this movie, which you can take with you. But it'd be really great if you wrote about it now, before you forget. And it's a commitment related to either being a parent or to your own parents. So this is just for you to take with you. And there's a place for you to sign it and date it, and there's an optional place for your child to sign it and date it. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you.